memorize the preamble of the Constitution when you were in school? I didn't. But we all know the first three words, don't we? What are the first three words of the Constitution?
We the people.
We the people. We the people. Those words are so famous, they made it to the original series of Star Trek. There's this episode where Captain Kirk actually reads the preamble of the Constitution. Because it's got some really great words in it. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. You think there's a lot in there, but I'm going to focus tonight on the blessings of liberty. See, liberty is one of those things, it's kind of like Monopoly. Every house has its own rules. It seems like everybody has a slightly different definition of liberty. Now, I'm weird. See, I like to go back to original documents. In fact, my favorite verse out of the Bible is Acts chapter 17, verse 11. The Bereans were more noble, more fair-minded than those of Thessalonica, in that they listened to what was said and went back to the scripture daily to see if it's so. So that's what I do. When someone tells me something says something, I go back to as close to original documents as I can. So when I wanted to understand what our founding fathers meant when they were talking about the blessings of liberty, I went to a gentleman by the name of Noah Webster. You may be familiar with his dictionary. See, Noah Webster was a contemporary of the framers of the Constitution. In fact, he was asked to edit, he was invited to edit the Federalist Papers. He put together spellers and primers, and in 1828, he took all of his work and he released his own dictionary. So I go to that dictionary and I look up the word liberty. The definition is 3 paragraphs long. It's a bit much. So I'm going to focus on civil liberty, which is primarily what the founders are talking about. Civil liberty is your right to have general liberty, to live your life without external interference, restricted only by the laws of nature, which I personally defined as we don't hurt people, we don't take their stuff, and such positive laws as are necessary for the safety and security of society. Right, that's still a bit much. So for tonight, I'm going to refer to liberty. When I refer to liberty, I mean the ability to live your life the way you want without unnecessary external interference. For example, we drive on the right-hand side of the road here in America, don't we? Why? Well, because if I drove on the right-hand side of the road and you drove on the left-hand side of the road and you drove in the shade, it wouldn't be very safe for society, would it? You'd come around a corner, there might be somebody right in the road with you. So we created a law that was necessary for the safety of society. What about helmet and seatbelt laws? Are they there for the safety of society or safety of the individual? They're there for the safety of the individual. But trust me, I won't ride a bike without a helmet. I won't, and I mean a motorcycle. I won't drive in a car without my seatbelt on. But there's a difference between me saying I will do that because that's what I think is right, and me telling someone else you have to do that because I think it's right. Liberty is all about living your life the way you see fit. Now think of today. You woke up in a bed whose mattress construction and contents were regulated by the federal government, that was covered with sheets and blankets that were manufactured based on rules set up by the federal government. You ate breakfast with food that was inspected and regulated by the federal government. You drove her in a car whose construction was regulated by the federal government. Our entire lives are regulated by the federal government. And that doesn't even count state regulations. Pretty much every moment of your life is regulated by the federal government. They tell you what kind of light bulbs you can have, what kind of toilets you can have in your house, what type of car you can drive, what kind of mileage it has to get, what type of mattress you want, what's got to be in the mattress. They regulate every part of our life. And if they're regulating it, Well, where's the liberty? Where's my choice? Where's your choice? Now, how did we get here? Well, to explain that, I have to use a story, and you guys are going to think I'm out of my mind. But trust me, I will bring it around at the end. See, when I was a much younger man, I spent several months in a state institution. It was the State University of New York. I don't know what you guys were thinking. Although it did resemble a combination of mental institution and prison, it was actually a state university. And in that state university, as a freshman, they used to tell us stories to keep us from getting in too much trouble. And one I will always remember was they would warn us about fraternities. And these fraternities, they would have parties. And I don't know if it's still this way, but in my day, those parties involved alcohol. Usually large quantities of alcohol, which meant somewhere during the night, some poor kid, generally a freshman, would end up passed out drunk. But the fraternity was prepared for this. So a couple of frat brothers would go down, they'd pick up the drunk freshman, and they would take him to a room they had set aside just for this purpose. See, in this room, all the furniture was bolted to the ceiling. The rug was glued to the ceiling, the lamps were upside down, the tables, the chairs, the desk, everything. In one version of the story, they even had a chandelier poking up right out of the middle of the floor. They would take this poor intoxicated freshman, they would lay him down on the floor. They would go next door where they had installed a one-way mirror so they could keep an eye on him as they pressed the button for the buzzer to wake him up. Now, what do you think this kid did when he woke up and he thought he was on the ceiling of a room? Well, he'd freak out. Now, they generally reacted in one of three ways. Some of them would simply grab onto whatever was nearest to them and hold on for dear life. Some of them would try to reach for the furniture, figuring, I can get to the floor that way, only the furniture always seemed to be just out of reach. Some of them would simply curl up in a fetal position and cry for their mama. But they all reacted that way because they were disoriented and they were intoxicated. Most Americans live their life intoxicated in an upside-down room. They're a bunch of drunk freshmen in an upside-down, and they don't realize it. You see, there's one extremely important fact that for some reason our government-run schools don't teach us when we're children. I forgot to look it up this afternoon. But I know the Constitution of most of our states, and I believe the state of Wyoming, state that all power is inherent in the people. That word inherent is important. It means it's yours naturally because you exist. It wasn't given to you. You have it. So if all power is inherent in the people, why do we feel so powerless when dealing with government officials? Because we've been trained since we entered school that all the power is in Washington, D.C., just like that poor kid found out that all the furniture was bolted to the ceiling. And think about it. When you feel powerless, people react one of three ways, don't they? They either grab onto whatever they've got and hold on to it for dear life, or they try to reach up and get a seat at the table, only finding it's just out of reach. I need a boost from a political party to get there, don't I? Or they simply curl up in a ball and cry for their mother. But how did we get here? How did we end up thinking we are so powerless when these constitutions say that all power is inherent in the people? Well, let's go back a little bit. Let's look at the Declaration of Independence. See, we're very familiar with the opening of the second paragraph. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Does anybody know what comes next?
No, but I'll go look.
There are constitutions in the back. There are declarations in the back. You don't need to, I know it. It says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So who creates government?
People.
People. We the people create the government. We ordained and established the Constitution and created the federal government, didn't we? What is the purpose of government? See, we've been taught that the purpose of government is to protect you, to put you in a little cocoon, to make sure that you're fed and housed and clothed, that you get education, that you get medical care. That they basically want you to live your life walking around without the government wiping your tushy the entire year, from the time you're born to the time you die. But that's not what the Declaration says, does it? It says, no, to protect our rights. So that you can do the rest of it. So that you can choose for yourself what's the best way to do this for me. So if government is created by us to protect our rights, and the only just powers they have come from whose consent? The people being governed. Why do we think that all power comes from Washington? Why do we have to beg Washington to do certain things? Why do we need to beg Washington to get the car we want? Why do you need, I forget, what's the capital of Wyoming? Cheyenne. I didn't learn that in school either. Why do we have to ask Cheyenne for permission to live our lives? One of the most aggravating things I go through every year is I live outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And every year I have to go down to my county courthouse and beg for permission to have a business so I can follow the laws of the state of Tennessee, which say I have to collect sales tax when I make sales inside of Tennessee. You tell me I need to beg your permission to have a business so I can follow the law? I hate it. It drives me nuts. It's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but I hate it. But that's how we live all of our lives. Like I said before, think of how much of your life is regulated. Maybe you have a cow and you want to sell milk. Whoo! USDA is coming after you. Or maybe you're like my grandmother. You bake these wonderful goodies and you want to sell them to people. Good luck. You got to have a license. You got to have a kitchen made up. You got to have this. It's crazy. They regulate every part of our life because somebody thought it was the government's role to protect them from bad milk, bad grandmother's cookies, bad everything. So we have this idea, all right, so if all power is inherent in the people, if governments are created by us, getting their just powers from us, what comes after that in the Declaration? She's looking. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these rights, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. That means most of what happened in the Capitol on January 6th was not an insurrection. It was an attempt to stop an insurrection. Now, yes, people entered the Capitol, some with permission, some may possibly without. Some did some property damage. They should be charged for the property damage. Should they be locked up indefinitely, waiting trial? No. But you see, they've got it backwards. See, they think that by trying to stop Biden from becoming president, that was an insurrection. No. Electing a chief executive, electing a president contrary to the Constitution, that's the insurrection. And it is not only our right, but if you read a little later, under certain circumstances, it is our duty to alter or abolish it. But Paul, they were trying to change the government. No, they weren't. They were trying to make sure that the government, see, the government isn't the government. The federal government is a creation of this little thing, the Constitution of the United States. We forget that. Biden isn't the government any more than Fauci is science. Be my guest. I make fun of him all the time. Both of them. So we have this crazy idea that just because a bunch of congressmen sign this, or just because the president has a pen and a phone and he signs something, it's law. You have to follow it. Well, no. See, part of the problem is we don't know the Constitution. Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution is known as the Supremacy Clause. It says that this Constitution and all laws of the United States made pursuant thereto, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States are the supreme law of the land. So there are three things that are supreme law of the land. The Constitution. It is the only unqualified supreme law of the land. If the Constitution says it, it supersedes everything. Article 6 Clause 2 goes on to say, every judge in every state in the United States are bound by that document. Constitutions or laws of the state notwithstanding. So the Constitution is the only unqualified supreme law of the land. Laws of the United States only if they are made pursuant to the Constitution. So if a law is made that is not pursuant to the Constitution, what is it? That's an interesting question. See, in Federalist Paper 78, Alexander Hamilton said that an act, I always reverse the negatives, says that an act of the Constitution, an act of a delegated authority, contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it is exercised, is void. Now, I've already showed you that government is a delegated authority. Right? All powers inherent in us. We delegate to the United States authority. I've also, and what is the commission for delegated office? Well, in the United States, in the federal government, it's the Constitution of the United States. In Wyoming, for a Wyoming office, it's the Constitution of Wyoming. So if an act of a delegated authority, contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it is exercised, is void, then every government actor who acts contrary to their Constitution, those acts are void. They're empty. They're meaningless. But Paul, that's Federalist Paper, that's not law. Well, you're right, that isn't. However, the Supreme Court of the United States in 1803, a little case called Marbury versus Madison, the Chief Justice Marshall, who wrote the opinion, says that an act of the legislature repugnant to the Constitution is void. It's empty. It's meaningless. What's interesting is, Alexander Hamilton went on in Federal 78, he said, no act of the legislature, contrary to the Constitution, can be valid. To say so would be to say that the deputy is superior to his principal, that the servant is above his master, that the representatives of the people are superior to the people themselves. Now compare that to today. 1787, we have the idea that a representative of the people is superior to the people is as crazy as believing the deputy is superior to the sheriff, or that when you go to a restaurant, your server is greater than you are. Now look at it today. When was the last time you met with any elected representative? Do they feel superior to you, or is it a servant to you? I remind you of one, Senator Dianne Feinstein. There was a committee meeting, and there was a general testifying before this committee. And per military protocol, the first time you engage a superior officer, you refer to them by their title or their rank. From then on, you refer to them either as sir or ma'am. So following military protocol, this general, the first time he addressed Ms. Feinstein, referred to her as Senator Feinstein. After that, he referred to her as ma'am. She got offended. She goes, please use my title as senator. I worked hard to get there. Okay, I understand he's a military officer. It's a good thing it wasn't me. I said, man, if you want that title, do it right. Treat that as an honorable title, not as a tool to make you feel better. And oh, by the way, ma'am, we have a little thing in the United States called the First Amendment that says Congress can make no law abridging the freedom of speech. If I wish to refer to you as Goat Feinstein, I'm perfectly allowed to, and you cannot pass a law that changes that. And if you do pass a law that changes that, it doesn't matter because the Constitution supersedes that. At least that's what I'd hope I would say. As politely as possible. You ever notice when they televise, like, especially House meetings, you see their nameplates always start with 3 letters, H-O-N. That doesn't stand for honey. That stands for honorable. I'm sorry, I've met very few members of the House that have any honor at all. Honor to me is something that's earned, not a title, an honorific that is given. So, okay, we have these laws that are invalid. Now, we've also got this little thing called the 10th Amendment. 10th Amendment says, the power is not delegated to the United States by this Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are retained by the states respectively by the people. Now, there's two very important words there. One is delegate. I mentioned delegate. See, delegate means to loan. We loan them powers. We don't give them powers. They don't assume powers. We loan it to them. But the other one is retain. So you've got the states retain powers. The people retain. Now, in order to retain something, you have to have it in the first place, right? So you see how everything is upside down? You see how all the furniture is stuck to the ceiling? They think they have honor without actually earning it. They think they get to tell us what to do when it's exactly the opposite way around. Now, when I was researching my book, I found a website that listed all the departments and agencies that are part of the federal government. I think there was over 650 of them. Now, there was a lot of duplicates, right? So we had Defense Department, Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Okay. I weeded out the duplicates. I still had over 450. And then I went through each and every one of them. And I was trying to find a power delegated to the United States that they possibly could exercise. And I mean, I was trying to be as generous as possible. Okay, take like Department of the Interior. Well, the federal government is allowed to own Washington, D.C., forts, magazines, dockyards, other needful buildings. If they want to have a department that oversees that, they want to call it department, okay. Now granted, they do a lot more than that, we all know that, but I was trying to be as generous as possible. With all that generosity, guess what percentage of the departments and agencies are exercising a power delegated to the United States? Take a wild guess.
0.
No, it's not 0. I've already shown one.
Maybe.
10%. 10%. Well, Department of Treasury, right? Congress can coin money. They can arrange for coining money. Okay. 10%. That means 90% of those government agencies do not legally exist. Why? They're exercising power not delegated to the United States. What do you call it when someone takes something that is not theirs? Theft. It says power that's stolen. In other words, they were exercising a power not delegated. So when Congress passed a law that was repugnant to the Constitution, is that the supreme law of the land? No. According to Alexander Hamilton and the Supreme Court, that was void. Meaning that 90% of these agencies, the legislation that created them, was void, which means they don't legally exist. Well, then why are they still around? Well, it kind of goes to the idea of, who knows the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Emperor's Clothes? Right? These two con men show up. They convince the emperor that they can make a set of clothes that is so fine, only special people can see it. So he buys the clothes and he's parading through town, buck naked. See, he doesn't want to admit he can't see the clothes because that means he's not special. He's supposed to be the emperor. And of course, everybody looks at this and says, well, he's the emperor. We can't say anything, can we? Until one young boy punches the emperor and goes, he's naked. And then everybody wakes up. Then everybody starts following. Goes, hey, wait, you're right, he is naked. What's going on here? It's the same thing here. President Biden says, I have the power to forgive student loans. And of course, everybody's afraid to say, no, you don't. We've been trained since we were put in a government-run school to do what you're told. To listen to those put in authority over you. To follow what the government says. So we all go along going, yep, he can do that, yes he can, what to do? My job is to stand here and say, he's naked as a jaybird. And that's just the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, 90% of these agencies don't legally exist. The EPA, Department of Energy, Department of Education, the CDC, the USDA, none of them legally exist. But they're perpetuated because the people are ignorant or afraid to say otherwise. They don't know, they don't care. You want to know why things are such a mess? Because 99% of Americans don't know and they don't care. And by the way, that was me until a few years ago. I didn't know. I was in my 40s before I actually started reading the Constitution. I was in my 50s before I started studying it. And the only reason I studied it is I heard about this man by the name of John Jay that said, every member of the state ought diligently to read and study the Constitution of his country, teach the rising generation be free. He said, by knowing your rights, you'll sooner perceive when they're violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. And I said, you know what, that's not a half bad idea. I should read the Constitution. And I was struck by two things. How much I had not been taught at school, and how much of what I was taught was wrong. I went to 12 years of government-run education. I learned more about the Constitution from Saturday morning cartoons. I was ignorant and apathetic. I didn't know, I didn't care. I taught myself. Well, Paul, didn't you go to law school? You got to go to law school. First of all, no, you don't need to go to law school. The Constitution was written so an 18th century farmer could understand it. Why not a 21st century farmer? Besides, in law school, they don't teach the Constitution. For 3.5 years, I've asked every lawyer I've met, when you were in law school, did you study the Constitution or constitutional law? One man so far said the Constitution. The rest of them studied the opinion of justices, which is why, if you read a Supreme Court opinion, like I do, you'll almost never find them actually quoting the Constitution. And when they do, they're usually picking bits and pieces out of it. They almost always quote, well, so-and-so said, in this case they said the Constitution meant that. Do you want to know why it's such a mess? Because we let it be. So here we've been taught, we've been trained. All the power goes to Washington, D.C. Oh, Washington, D.C. I don't like something, what do? I go to my congressman and try and get a law. Because I don't like the way that person's living their life. See, the interesting thing is, historically, laws were designed to punish evil. Now we use it to regulate our lives. Somebody said, we shouldn't be driving faster than 55 miles an hour, it burns too much gas. Suddenly there's a national 55 mile per hour speed limit. There's no legal basis for that. Somebody comes along and says, yeah, there's no reason, it's not in there, but we found a right to kill unborn babies. And everyone just kind of went along. Do you realize even if Roe v. Wade was right, Roe v. Wade was never law. And in fact, there were only two entities that were responsible to follow what the court said in Roe v. Wade. Do you know who they were? The lady who was nicknamed Roe and the state of Texas for whom Wade worked. None of the other states had any legal need to follow the opinion of the court. But we all, like lemmings, well, it's the law of the land. I was interviewed the other day for a radio program, and the person said, well, what do you say to people who said, well, the Dobbs decision overturned 50 years of precedent. People depended on that. I said, Roe overturned thousands of years of precedent that people depended on. We don't know. Now, why don't we know? Well, sure, we're not taught. In fact, when I was in school, I was pretty much told that the Constitution's for judges and lawyers. It's not for you. I was driven away from it. By federal and state law, they're required to teach the Constitution every Constitution Day. But they don't teach the Constitution says, they teach about it. They say, well, 1787, a bunch of old, rich, white guys got down and wrote this down, and that was 200 plus years ago. It doesn't matter anymore. Oh, it absolutely matters. See, the Constitution is a tool. Now, what happens if you take a tool, you throw it to the dirt? You walk on it, you walk by it, and then you complain, why doesn't it fix everything? The Constitution is ink on parchment. It is not going to get up and start dope slapping people every time they do something stupid. It's a tool. It's a tool that says, here, I can pick this up. And I can read it, and I can study it. And you know what it tells me? It tells me I can look a government actor in the eye and go, no. No. Just after COVID hit, I was doing a book fair in a neighboring county. And 2 days before the event, the county passed a mask mandate. I show up, I set up my book table. It was outside, so I had a little pop-up tent. Director comes over, the organizer comes over, Paul, that was great, wonderful, we're glad you're here. By the way, the county passed a mask mandate. And we're on private property, so we should be okay, but we're near the public road and we don't know what the police are going to do. Now let me ask you, are those the words of a citizen or a subject? A subject. A master or a servant? A servant. She was a servant. Now I had studied the Constitution, so you know what I said? I said, I don't care that mask mandate is illegal and I can prove it. And I showed her this piece of paper I put together. I said, by the way, the Fourth Amendment, they're violating, if the police were to come, they'd be violating my rights under the Fourth Amendment. See, they are depriving me of my person. They're giving an unreasonable search to see if I have a mask. If they want to take me into custody, it's an unreasonable seizure because they have no probable cause that I am a danger to anyone. What proof do you have that I am contagious? What proof do you have that the mask would stop me being contagious to other people? None. See, we understand we got things backwards. The government has the burden of proof, not the other way around. I don't have to prove I have a right. They have to prove they have a legal justification, a constitutional justification, to deprive me of a right. So they deprive me of my rights under Article 4, Amendment 4. Also under Amendments 5 and 14, they are depriving me of both my liberty and the property I have in my body without due process of law. Due process of law is defined as a legal or governmental process designed to protect the rights of the individual. That mask mandate wasn't designed to protect my rights. It was designed to make people feel better. It was useless, but they did it anyway. See, then I would point out to them the Supremacy Clause. Article 6, Clause 2, which I've already described to you. Which means the Constitution and the amendments I just mentioned supersede anything the county does. Supersedes it. Oh, by the way, and I pointed to Alexander Hamilton and Chief Justice Marshall. I quoted those two documents saying, see, they say an act of the legislature opposing the Constitution is void. Doesn't matter if it's a county legislature does it. That's repugnant to the Constitution, it is void. Oh, by the way, Mr. Officer, there's a little thing called 18 U.S.C. 242. It's federal law. It says, whoever under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom willfully subject a person in a state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district of deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the constitutional laws of the United States, nice, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. Now, since I have now informed you that you are about to infringe on my rights, if you continue, that means it is willful, meaning you'll be guilty under violation 18 U.S.C. 242, punishable by a year and a fine up to a year in jail. Oh, by the way, officer, if you even threaten to go for that sidearm, that taser, or that pepper spray you're carrying, that's now a fine and 10 years in jail. Which means if you proceed, my first call is my lawyer, my second call is the FBI, my third is the U.S. Attorney's Office, and my fourth is to everybody I can find that has any media access. With your name and your shield number, your badge number. How would you like to proceed? Now, I'm no fool, right? 50-50 shot, I walk off in handcuffs. But I had to ask myself, what is my liberty worth? Was it going to be a sheep and a slave and just follow along because my massa said so? Or was I prepared to defend and assert my rights, like John Jay had said? See, the difference between me and most Americans is most Americans are drunk. What do I mean? How do you think the government gets away with all the illegal laws they pass? Simple. They bribe you for it. Take, for example, schools. Used to be community get together. They say, you know what? We're getting a lot of kids. We should build a school. And they'd all get together. They'd build a school. They'd hire a school teacher. They'd keep an eye on what the school teacher was doing, but basically then they'd send the rugrats to school to teach rather than mom teaching them. And then of course they said, well, you know what? Let's have these. We'll call them public schools. So we'll get a board of people elected by the people to oversee the school, to do that. But then the state came along and said, you know what? Darn it, it's a lot of money to build that schoolhouse, isn't it? It's a lot of money, it's a lot of work, and how do you know you got a good teacher? I mean, does she have the right certifications? Has she passed the right process? You got a license? Tell you what we'll do. We'll build the schoolhouse, we'll pay for the teachers, we'll vet the teachers, and best of all, we'll get some other schlub to pay for it. Isn't that how it works? Well, they might as well hand you a shot of tequila. Here you go. Here's a nice bribe. Take that. Of course, then the federal government came along and said, oh, we can't trust the states to do this. We got to do it. Constitution says we can't, but hey, it's necessary. William Pitt the Younger once said, necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. There's a cry of tyrants, there's a creed of slaves. But you see, we got our shot of tequila. I don't have to pay for this anymore. Of course, I forgot to tell you that they're telling the next town over, well, these guys have to pay for it. And it keeps going and going and going. Oh, you want to take, make sure that your food is packaged properly. We'll take care of that. Here's another shot of tequila. We'll tell you how to do that. We'll tell you how to do it. How do you don't want to only pay for the health care? No, you can't be trusted with the decision on what health care coverage you should have and how to pay for that. We'll tell you. We can't trust that you would get a good deal on a student loan. No, we have to do it because we know it all. We are the experts. Oh, this disease that comes around that's 98.4% survival rate, but you can't be trusted to make those decisions for. We have to tell you. We have the gall to tell you that you don't matter, that your job is not essential. Can you think of any worse thing to tell somebody? That they are not essential. That job puts the food on the plate of somebody. Not just the person doing the job, but their employer. Not just the person that owns the shop, but the person that goes to the shop to buy something. If the shop owner isn't selling it, the consumer can't buy it, can they? But yet the government said, you don't matter. And the vast majority of the American people said, oh yeah. They said, put a diaper on your face. Do you have any proof that the diaper helps? No, but Fauci's the science and he knows. He's the expert. Man, as dumb as a box of rocks, but he's an expert. Well, what if I don't want to put a mask on? Because, masks get icky and gunky and nasty. No, you have to do it because we have experts that say so. I had this debate with my wife's neurologist. She went to a new neurologist. We walked in, signage right there that says, must wear a mask. Mask required. We walk in, no mask. Fill out the paperwork, no mask. Sit down in the waiting room, no mask. In fact, there was a guy in there with the mask. When he saw us without mask, he took his mask off. Yay. They take us back, and the nurse does all the blood pressure and the heart rate. No mask. Doctor comes in, talking to us. We were almost done before the doctor realized we're not wearing masks. She says, oh, you need to wear a mask. I go, why? They don't do anything. I said, did you bother looking at the CDC data? I'm not a doctor. I can read that and say, they're not. I said, they're a cloth mask like this, 5% effective. Well, 5% is better than nothing. I'm like, you are a doctor, aren't you? You do realize that if this mask stops 5% of my exhaust, you're still breathing 95% of my exhaust? Does it really make a difference? See, we're not thinking. We've been turned into automatons. We don't think. We let experts tell us. We let government, because we've been trained to do what government says. And of course, you don't want to stop that because, well, then they'll stop handing you the tequila. Oh, remember when the federal government came along and said, you know what? It really is terrible, but there are kids in school that are hungry. I know what we'll do. We'll send money to the states to buy them free lunches. And then along comes Biden and says, if you don't let the boys in the girls' room, we're cutting off the tequila. And of course, all the states are, oh, okay. We don't think anymore. We don't have liberty anymore. We're afraid of losing the tequila. We're drunk. Alexis de Tocqueville said that America will continue until Congress figures out it can bribe the public with the public's money. That is a lesson that Congress has learned well. Everything, politics at every level I've found, involves bribery. Vote for me because I'll give you this, or I'll pay for this project, or I'll give you this check. Or the other person is evil, they'll take those away from you. Just look at the political ads. That's all they talk about. Either I'm going to give you something, or you can't vote for the other guy because they're evil and they're going to take something away. 95% of it is bribery. It's illegal. It doesn't matter. We have to start to learn that we are the masters of government, not servants. We tell the government what it can do, not the other way around. They are our employees, and this is their employee manual. This is it. You hire somebody to represent you. Remember, all power is inherent in the people. We live in a republic, which means we elect people to represent us, to act in our name for us. We're a constitutional republic, which means we put rules around those representatives, around those employees, but we never hold them accountable to the rules. How else do you explain a Congress with an average of 15 to 20% approval rating having an 85 to 90% re-election rating? Because the American people say, I'll give you the tequila, and whoever is going to give you the most tequila is the one we vote for. How can you tell the politicians lying? When their lips are moving. What does that say about the American people? Forget what it says about the politicians. What does it say about you and me? That we not only hire people we know are lying to us, the ones that do it the best, the ones who keep around the longest. Pretty dire straits. We are at a precipice. We're getting to the point where, as Reagan said, freedom is only one generation away from extinction. We are right on that line, folks. He said it must be fought for, defended, and passed on to the next generation to do the same, or you'll one day find yourself telling your children and your children's children what it once was like in America where men were free. This is what, a year or so ago, I was doing a meeting. I do student groups and college groups. College group had asked me to speak to them, and near the end, one young man, I can call him young man, he's my daughter's age, said, Paul, this is around COVID time, right? He says, Paul, you've been talking about rights, you've been talking about infringements, but really, if it's the right thing to do, what does it matter? Yeah. So it's time for me to tell him what it was like in America when we were free. I took a beat, I looked him dead in the Zoom lens, because they wouldn't let us meet in person. And I went on a litany of rights I enjoyed at his age. He has no clue. See, I was the one that had read and studied. He had gone to government-run schools, which tells you to sit down, shut up, do what you're told, take your medicine. So how do we change this? If this seems so dire, how do we change it? I'm always asked, how do we change Washington? How do you change Washington, D.C.? The answer is, you don't. You don't. You start right here. What county is this?
Hot Springs.
Hot Springs County. I should have seen that. I was up at the Hot Springs State Park. See, most people don't realize that your sheriff is the most powerful law enforcement officer in the country, at least in your county. The sheriff has the legal authority to arrest the President of the United States for crimes committed within his jurisdiction. He'd have a hard time with the Secret Service. No joke. But yeah, if the Biden motorcade came through, Biden came out shaking hands and just decked somebody, grabbed one of the Secret Service guys' guns and shot somebody, the sheriff had the legal authority to arrest him. He said, but Paul, that's just the county sheriff. Yeah, what do you know about your county sheriff? How many of you actually met your county sheriff? Good. See, I moved from New York State to outside Nashville, Tennessee. Small county. My county has more cows than people in it. All right, rural Tennessee. I bumped into my county sheriff at a meeting. I said, I've been meaning to get with you. I've been meaning to call your office and set up an appointment. I want to come talk to you. He goes, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to get to know you. I want to know you outside the campaign trail. You're not trying to buy it. You're not trying to bribe me for a vote. I didn't put it quite that way. So I sat down. We had a nice meeting, and we were talking. At one point, I said, Sheriff, this is what I expect of a sheriff. Very simple. I said, when me or anyone in my house picks up the phone, dials 911, I want to know that the sheriff or that the deputy that shows up has been trained that their first and primary responsibility is to defend the rights of everyone there. He goes, absolutely. I said, not to enforce state law or federal law or to back up the state police, the state troopers, or the federal agent. He goes, no. To protect the rights. Now that's what I want from a sheriff. But I offered him something in return. See, I said, I looked at him and said, what can I do for you? Now, I'm in a unique situation. I'm a constitutional scholar. I said, you need a position paper for a constitutional play. You need someone to be at a press conference, to testify before a committee. I will be there. If you've got my back, I have yours. See, that's the problem. We keep looking for someone else to defend our rights for us. That's not what liberty is. Liberty is you defend your own rights. Government's there to protect your rights, but you got to be the one that stands up and says, no. How many, does your sheriff have a posse? Does he have a group of people that he can depend on, that he can call and say, I need help? I told my sheriff, what can I do? Can I teach your deputies? I said, I'd love to be able to know the deputy that covers my area by name. I'd like to see him and I can know his name. I'd like him to know me. I want to be there. I want to be able to say, pick up the phone and say, Paul, there's an accident at this intersection. Can you go deal with traffic till I get there? Absolutely, I'd be there. We get these little Amber Alerts, right? Hey, Paul, can you check out this restaurant and see if some... Does he have someone that's helping him? Does he have somebody that has his back? See, it's real interesting. I talk to a lot of people, and they say that the sheriff frequently is like, well, I'm not sure. My sheriff, when he was asked would he enforce a mask mandate, he said, no, it's unconstitutional. How many sheriffs would stand up and do that? How many sheriffs figure if they did stand up to do that, they'd be standing alone? We need to stand together, folks. Start with the sheriff. County commission. Is the county commission following the laws, following the Constitution? Are they doing their job? If not, why do you got them there? When they are, do you back them up? In 2003, Kansas passed what they call their Second Amendment Protection Act. It said that any firearm or firearm accessory manufactured, sold, and retained within the state of Kansas was not subject to the National Firearms Act, and that anybody that tried to infringe on the rights of a citizen of the state of Kansas based on that would be arrested. So some poor schlub built a suppressor in Kansas, and he sold it to a person in Kansas. The ATF showed up, and Governor Brownback and his Attorney General folded like a cheap suit. Partially because they're politicians, therefore they lied. But I also think partially because who would stand up with them? Because you know if they stand up, they're going to get hammered by the U.S. Attorney General. They're going to get hammered by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're going to get hammered in the media. Who's going to stand up with them? Just look at DeSantis. He's standing up. There are some people that are standing up with him, just a handful. But I know people in Florida that stand up when that stands up with him. When when a reporter said, well, we know that Ian's coming and we know that there's been a failure, and he's like, no. Look at everything, you're lying. And of course, the parents are like, oh man, how many people stand with DeSantis? How many people stand with your judge, with your sheriff, with your governor, with any elected employee when they do the right thing? How many of you would stand up with your neighbor? Now, I can't see my neighbor's house from mine. But if my neighbor calls up and says, hey, Paul, I need a hand, I'm there. Maybe it's to round up a cow. That happens. He comes up and says, hey, Paul, the ATF is here telling me they have to come in to inspect my guns because I just bought a gun. They got to make sure it was... What do? Hang on a second. I drive right up. Excuse me, officer, where's your warrant? Do we stand up for their neighbors? You say, Paul, okay, let's say we do that. We get a good sheriff. We look at our county committeemen and say, are you constitutionally sound or not? If you are, great. If you're not, we're going to get rid of you. Let's say you turn Hot Springs County into a hotbed of constitutionalism. What does that matter? It's one little speck. It's a drop in the ocean. My answer is simple. Wouldn't it be a better place to live? If for no other reason to have your liberties and your rights protected, wouldn't that be worth it? Sure it would. But what if you weren't alone? What if there were other counties in Wyoming? And they started doing the same thing. They started saying, you know what, this idea that these elected people are our employees, that's a good idea. And we have a standard to judge them by. How do you know if your employee's following the rules if you don't know what the rules are? Let's figure out the rules. Let's study the rules. We don't need a law professor to teach us. We can read, can't we? You're smart, at least as smart as an 18th century farmer, right? Well, if I change, if Hot Springs County changes, and other counties change, well, doesn't Wyoming become a better place? Why? Because the people are going to start hiring better representatives in Cheyenne. And they'll stop passing these ridiculous, stupid laws. And maybe just, they realize that this Constitution says, wait a second, when any federal official does an act of power, threatens us with a power not delegated to them, we not only have the legal right, we have the legal duty to say, no. Mr. Biden, you want to send your ATF agents to see about straw purchases? Pound sand. If they show up, we'll have them arrested for harassment. There was a sheriff, I can't remember where it was. There was a farmer who was being harassed by the USDA. Every week they were sending inspectors. Every week. He went to a sheriff and said, they're driving me nuts. Sheriff, I'll take care of it. Wrote a letter to the director of the USDA. Because you are harassing a citizen of my county. You will not allow another agent into my county without my express permission, or they will be arrested and jailed. Guess what stopped happening? That's what we need. That was at the county level. You have DeSantis has been doing this. Abbott, I love these guys. They said, the Biden administration says, we're going to send all those illegal aliens that we're not bothering to stop, we're going to send them to your state. I said, fine, we'll send them to your state. Pound sand. They sent them to the National Observatory, the official residence of the vice president, who's supposedly the czar over the border. Go for it. Pound sand. What happens if we change Wyoming? See, on this trip alone, I've been to North Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming. I'm stopping in Nebraska on my way back. I've already got invitations for Pennsylvania, Delaware, West Virginia, Georgia, Florida. Where else I got? I've already been asked back to North Dakota, Idaho. Maybe you guys will have me back. I've got invitations for Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. I have an invitation to Arizona. I even had an invitation to North and South California. Now think about this. If then we can make a difference here in Wyoming. What happens if we start changing those other states? Washington doesn't matter anymore. The president goes back to being a functionary, a servant of Congress, not the most powerful man in the world with the man on the phone. So we don't fix Washington by fixing Washington. We fix Washington by making them irrelevant, by restoring the states to their proper role. And we do that by restoring the counties to their proper role. But it takes people that A, know the Constitution, know their rights, know how to defend and assert them, and B, are willing to do that for themselves and for their neighbors. See, earlier this year, I was served a federal subpoena. It's a great story. My phone is set up so if I don't recognize the number, it goes right to voicemail. So I get a voicemail. Yeah, this is so-and-so with the FBI. Would you please call us back? So I look up the number. No, I don't use Google. I look up the number. It says probable spam. So I ignore it. A couple weeks later, I get another voicemail. Yeah, this is so-and-so with the FBI. Would you please call us back? It's a different number. I look up the number. Oh, it's the FBI office in a neighboring town. I pick up the phone. I call them. Yes, Mr. Earl, thank you for calling us back. We have a federal subpoena that's to deliver to you, and we wanted to call you first. First, that was a very wise move. Let's face it, 2 armed men in a black SUV show up at my front door. They're not getting a cordial greeting. But this is they were very, I know the FBI has been under a lot of bad stuff going on there. But these 2 men were professional. They called me up. They made sure that I knew they were coming. They made sure I would be home, which means my wife doesn't have to deal with this, right? They show up. Now, I'm a smart person, right? I'm standing on my front porch, back to the front door, both of them in front of me where I can see them. They hand me the subpoena. They tell me the instructions about all that. Okay, yes, fine, thank you very much. One of them got chatty. I live on 70 acres, which I know out here is a small apartment. Right? In Tennessee, 70 acres is a good sized chunk of land. And the guy gets chatty. This is a wonderful farm. It's really great. How many acres do you have? When did you buy it? And I looked at him and I said, I don't mean to be rude, but I do not get chatty with law enforcement. I will, right? This question has nothing to do with the at hand. I'm not going to get chatty about it. He goes, I understand. I appreciate that. We wrapped up our thing, and they went home, and they left. Do you know who's behind the door that I was standing in front of? The door with my back, I had my back to, because that's where I carry my sidearm. My direction of escape. My wife, with the home phone. 911 dialed, ready to hit send. Call for help. Call for the troopers. That's what I want, right? When you read and study the Constitution and you understand your rights, I'm not saying there won't be a price to pay, but you're prepared to defend yourself. You're prepared to defend your neighbors. You see, for too long, the American people have sat around waiting for someone else to defend their rights. We got to hire the elephant to defend our rights, or the donkey to defend our rights. I'm going to vote. I've always voted donkey. I've always voted elephant. I've always voted the moon is made of cheese party. I don't care. We look for someone else to defend our rights. We want the sheriff to do it. We want the police to do it. We want the mayor to do it. We want the governor to do it. You know who we never asked to defend our own rights? Us. Do you know why your rights are disappearing? Because we won't bother defending them. We keep looking for someone else to do the job for us. See, the blessings of liberty are worth what they're worth. They have made this the greatest, the most powerful, the most generous, the most inventive country this world has ever seen. Because when you have liberty, we can do things with it. You're not put into a mold. When I was a kid, my grandparents had a house with a stone facade. Those stones were literally picked out of the stream, uncut, and fit into the walls. Now that's a lot of work, right? Because you got stones, you got to find the right stone for the right spot, and the right way. Now compare that to the house I live in now. It has a brick facade. They're all uniform, aren't they? They're all exactly the same. Which, if you look at it, is exactly what the progressives have been trying to do to us for the last 80, 90 years, 100 years. Actually, more than 100 years. Go all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt. They want to make us uniform. See, when you're uniform, when you're a brick, you're a cog in a machine. They don't like you, they can take you out, slide another one in just like it, because you're all exactly the same. And nothing changes. However, look at the communist countries. I'm from the Cold War days, right? When most of Soviet and Russia's inventions were stolen from Americans. By the way, today it's the Chinese, they do exactly the same thing. They steal all of our ideas. Because there's no uniqueness. There's not somebody saying, hey, what if we did this? What if I tried this? What if I did something different? We're being molded. Our children are being molded to make us cogs in the machine. And when they're cogs in the machine, there's no liberty. And you can't try anything different. Because the experts say, no, you have to be square. And to me, that's a very sad place to be. But again, the biggest problem is we keep looking for someone else to do it for us. Before I go, I have one last story I want you to consider. Have you seen the movie Saving Private Ryan? No? The theme is simple, right? It's D-Day, World War II. Chaos. There's a young man, Private Ryan. He is the last surviving brother in his family. He's the last kid. They've been all wiped out except him. But they have no idea where he is because D-Day was chaos. So the theory of the movie is they're going to send a company to go save Private Ryan. The last battle scene, Captain Miller has saved Private. They found him. He saved him. Private Ryan is alive. He's going to go home. But it cost Captain Miller his entire company. There's like one man alive left. Captain Miller is dying. He's sitting in the mud, propped up against a motorcycle, dying of his wounds. And he reaches over and he grabs Private Ryan by the shirt. He pulls him in close, and he has just 2 words for Private Ryan. Earn this. Earn this. The men sacrificed their lives so that he could live. Earn that sacrifice. They trusted that he wouldn't squander what had been given to him. That he would take those blessings of liberty and he would use them and he would share them and defend others. Earn this. Earn that opportunity. Millions of men and women have fought and sacrificed and bled and died to protect your blessings of liberty. To secure to you your rights. To defend. They didn't take an oath to defend the president. They didn't take an oath to defend the flag. They took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Isn't that something we should earn? Shouldn't the American earn that sacrifice? You go into the military, you're not getting rich. You're going to get paid well. You're going to be sent to strange places. They made tremendous sacrifices so that we could live free. Shouldn't we earn this? I say the same thing to politicians, to people who either are in elected office or are seeking elected office. You're asking people to trust you, to support you. They're going to give you money. They're going to hand out flyers. They're going to knock on doors. They're going to do a lot of work to get you elected. Earn that. They're putting the people that vote for you are trusting that you will hold to your promise, your solemn promise to support this document. Earn that trust. Whenever someone, I don't endorse candidates, but whenever someone comes to me asking for my vote, I have one simple question that starts everything off. It says, show me where you fulfilled your oath to support this document when it cost you something. Not when it was, well, the whole party, we're rah rah, and I showed up to this event. No. When it cost you something. When you went against your party to do the right thing. When you went against even possibly public opinion to do what the Constitution said you had to do. But 90% of the time, I get some party platform plank. As far as I'm concerned, they're disqualified. I won't vote. Conversation's over. No, I won't vote for you. If you can't give me an example when you at least tried to stand up for this, you're useless. You're not qualified for the office. You don't deserve that office. You won't earn that office. Now, about 5, maybe 8% of the time, I'll get somebody that says, you know what? I raised my right hand, I took an oath, and I fulfilled that oath. They sent me overseas. They sent me to dangerous duty to defend this Constitution. I'll give them a chance, especially if they've never served before. I'll give them a chance. If they have served before, I'm going to ask you, when did you do that in whatever office you served? But by the way, I'll even extend it sometimes to law enforcement. I served as a deputy. I served as a police officer to protect and to serve. And this is what I did. This is the hard. I'll take that as a chance. Very rarely do I find somebody that says, no, you're right. I said, I went against the party to support legislation because it was the right thing to do. It was a constitutional thing to do. Or I went against my party leadership to oppose legislation because it was the right thing to do. I didn't have to be bribed like Senator Joe Manchin to get my vote. I didn't turn my back on my people and my oath to support the Constitution. But we don't do that, do we? Well, I do. But there's one other thing that I want you to consider. Have either of you served? No? You served? See, I hold those who risk their lives for my freedom in great honor. And I noticed after 9/11, we started thanking men and women for their service, right? You'd see someone in uniform or a veteran, and you'd thank them for their service. I loved that. That was great. But I noticed it started quickly petering off. It happened less and less frequently. And I wondered why. And I thought about this for a while, and I came up with an answer, I think. See, if I thank a veteran for their service, which I do, it doesn't really cost me anything, does it? Sure, maybe I buy them a cup of coffee, or I pay for their lunch, but it doesn't really cost me anything, does it? I've asked them to do all the work, take all the risk, and all I can offer is a passing thank you, maybe a hearty handshake. Doesn't cost me anything, does it? So I have a new thing I'm trying out. Seems to be going over well, and I'd encourage you to consider this as well. Whenever I meet someone in uniform, by the way, I tested this out on a major general, actually lieutenant general, retired lieutenant general. I said, you've sacrificed. You and your family have sacrificed. I said, and I did the whole speech. I said, when those men signed the Declaration of Independence, declaring we were no longer subjects to the king, that we wanted freedom, we wanted liberty, they pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. So when I encounter a member of the military, when I encounter a veteran, I say, I pledge to you, you sacrificed so I could be free. I pledge to you my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor to earn the sacrifice you made, that your family made, so that me and my family could live free. That seems to get their attention. See, that cost me something. I spend most of my life, I work 6.5 days a week trying to spread the ideas of liberty. I travel the country. I don't charge to come to any of these places. They're nice. Frequently they'll pay for a hotel room. But I'm still paying for gas. I'm still paying for food. I'm still paying to get my way around. I sell books. I haven't broke even yet. That's my fortune. I gave up a 30-year IT career to do this, ladies and gentlemen. I had a very successful career. I could have just been a drone and spent the next 10, 12, 15 years of my life retired very comfortably. I do this. I give it my sacred honor because I have a daughter. I live in a country that's not as free as the one I inherited from my parents. It's partially my fault. I want to leave it a little better for my daughter. But I can't do it alone. I can be one voice shouting in the wilderness. It's going to make little difference. So I come out to places like Thermopolis, Wyoming, which is a beautiful little town, but it's a long way from home. I live outside of Nashville. I don't know how many miles I got left to drive to get home. Isn't freedom and liberty yours, your children, your grandchildren's worth some of your life, some of your fortune, some of your honor? See, I used to refer to myself as a Johnny Appleseed of the Constitution. I've changed that. If you're familiar with the Bible parable of the sower, that's me. I sow liberty. I've met people on this trip. My job is to throw seeds out, right? They were the roadway. I wasn't changing that person's mind with a baseball bat. Seeds were just bouncing right off. Nothing I can do. They're not going to show up to an event like this. Oh well. Some have been, I imagine, stony ground. They'll get excited, they'll laugh at my jokes. Maybe they'll buy a book or two. And as soon as they walk out that door, well, they'll just put the book on a shelf and forget all about me. Until I come back. Maybe they'll show up. Some are weedy ground. They'll try. They'll get started. They'll start getting involved. But life gets in the way and it just chokes them right out. But if I can find one heart that is fertile soil in this town, in this county, that person learns, studies, grows, then one day they're the ones spreading the seeds. Then I've done my job. When John Quincy Adams entered the House of Representatives, he is the only man to first serve as president and then go to the House of Representatives. And he came on an anti-slavery platform. It was an 80% pro-slavery House. Do you know what he did? Legislation, resolutions. He drowned them in paper. They got so frustrated, they actually passed a House rule they nicknamed the John Quincy Adams gag order, gag rule, just to shut him up, and they couldn't. And then one day he was asked, somebody asked him, John Quincy, you've been doing this for years, and every time you lose, why do you keep doing it? His answer was simple. Duty is ours. Results are God's. I'd love to be selling those books like hotcakes. I'd love for people to recognize my name and say, there's a guy, we want him to come talk to us because he's great. He does a good job of it. But those are the results. Those are God's. My job is to sit here, to drive around the country and spread some seeds. Hopefully I've found some fertile soil here tonight. And with that, I will take questions. Oh, by the way, I did forget. I want to give a shout out to Michael, who can't make it. I know you wanted to be here. I know you tried to be here. I'm hoping you're watching the live stream. I hope we didn't get kicked off. Because even though I show up and the crowd is small, that's not my job. I've done my job. And I found to thank Michael for making sure his wife made us set this up so that he could watch even though he couldn't be here. And with that, we'll take questions, and I'm assuming you can ask questions through the comments on the live stream.
I don't see the Constitution as being law. I think it precedes law.
Except it says right in it is the supreme law.
It's still not law.
Why not?
It's not instituted by some organization.
Sure it was. The states ratified it. The original 13 states said, yes, we accept this, all of this, we will be bound by this, including the clause that says it's the supreme law of the land, even superseding our own constitutions.
Still not buying it.
Well, all I can tell you is what it says.
Yep.
All I can say is what the, even back to, I'm gonna paraphrase this because I don't think I can quote it exactly. Chief Justice Marshall, Marbury versus Madison, said that every place that we have a written constitution, it is assumed to be the preeminent law of the land. That is the basic concept of a constitution. Now, I can't make you think that.
No, but I guess my issue is that I have a warped sense of what law means.
Could be. We tend to think of law as legalese, statute. But statute, what makes statute law?
Because we say so.
Why did the people, when they made the Constitution law, not make it law? They said so. See, the interesting Constitution, let me put it another way. The Constitution is a compact,
Yes.
right? It's an agreement between the states. The states said, we will be bound by this. Why is that not a law? Because we said so. Think about it. You can always hit me at the website if you got a good comeback and you have a question for it. My website, I have a whole section dedicated to questions. People asking them and me answering them. Right? So, by all means, ask.
Basically, the only thing making it a law is the willingness of the majority to obey it.
By that logic, well, there is a little bit of logic to that. Because I believe it was, who has it said it? I want to say it was John Adams, but that doesn't sound right. He said it was it Richard Henry Lee? No, Noah Webster. So the central government cannot impose an unjust law because the people hold the sword. So yes, laws are agreements, they're understandings. And just like any other contract, the Constitution is law because the parties to it agree we'll be bound by it. If we aren't bound by our word to follow something, what are we bound by? Then we are no longer, to paraphrase John Adams, a nation of laws, but a nation of men. And whoever has the biggest soapbox, whoever gets the most people to agree with them, they don't even have to be the majority, they just have to be vocal enough. They rule the world. Just look at what's been going on with the homosexual and transgender movements. They are a tiny minority, but they rule the world because everybody follows what they say, even in contradiction to what we've said before. That's getting pretty close to anarchy. Anything else? If not, I do thank you for taking your time. I mean, it's a Friday night. You probably had other things you could have done, but you took some time, you hung out with me, you listened to me ramble for a while. Hopefully you picked up something. Hopefully I dropped a couple seeds along the way. And who knows, maybe you guys will have me back one day. Thank you.